So for day one, we are focusing on legal tech. So we've got three guests joining us on the program today. And our first one, as she introduced herself, is Gabriela Cubeiro, the CEO at CASEpeer Legal Software. Gabriela, thank you so much for being our first guest and joining us today.
Well, it's an honor. Thanks, Nick. And yeah, I know your audience has great things. You have great things in store for your audience over the next few days.
I believe that that is true. So I got to ask you our first question, right? These past few years, we've seen the relationship between lawyers and technology change drastically. What have you found most interesting or surprising about legal tech and lawyer technology usage since the beginning of like 2020?
Yeah, it's so interesting, and many of you joining us, especially if you've been either an attorney or a paralegal in the space, or if you're a legal technologist yourself, back in that like 10 to 5 years ago, everybody was worried about putting their data in the cloud, putting their phone stuff in the cloud, even outsourcing work, right? Like these were fears that firms had. And one of the things that just amazed me in 2020 was essentially the switch flipped, right? Law firms all of a sudden embraced the cloud because they had to. Yes, some of these firms were forced into it. Maybe that was one of your firms. If you're joining us, that might be resonating. Maybe you finally got onto VoIP phones. Maybe you finally embraced a cloud-based case management software. Maybe you started using eFax or some of these other great technologies that make working remotely possible. And the beauty of it is now firms are going back to the office, or they're embracing a hybrid model, and they're still able to harness this technology, which is really powerful. So, I was surprised by two things in the last 2 years, and in 2020 in particular. One, how quickly law firms adapted for their clients and made the change. Attorneys get a very bad rap for being sticks in the mud. Sometimes us legal technologists are guilty of complaining about that, but quite honestly, it was not true. I saw so many law firms diving into change, embracing change, being really innovative and creative with solutions in order to continue to operate at their best possible level under really hard circumstances. And then the other piece has been the willingness to outsource, again, to improve efficiency and in ways to improve client service, which is, for example, like what Answering Legal provides, right? You're letting go of certain pieces, but it makes your firm better, and it makes the experience better for your clients.
I like that you gave lawyers a little bit of credit there. And a lot of them changed out of necessity. And as a good friend of mine says, if it ain't broke, don't break it. But then it kind of broke. And so attorneys went about adopting all the technology that was necessary in order for them to sort of stay afloat and continue to evolve as the circumstances of practicing law changed.
Well, and even to that point, like it's the things that even law firms hated early on in 2020 during the pandemic, like doing Zoom court and doing hearings and all these appearances over Zoom. And now most of my clients don't want that stuff to go to waste. They do want a jury trial typically to be happening in person, because that's really hard to do over Zoom. But the fact that they don't have to put on a full suit, maybe they need to put on a jacket and a shirt, but that they don't need to drive for 2 hours and make a client drive for 2 hours who maybe is in pain or injured, especially in the plaintiff space, right? It saves so much time to be able to do things like this virtually. So I'm hoping too, in terms of what we see continue on in legal practice, that we see courts willing to allow for some of these things to continue. And I think mostly we're hearing that courts are open to it. I know some judges maybe not so much, but overwhelmingly, I feel like law firms and lawyers do want those things to stick around.
I'm glad to hear that, for accessibility purposes, obviously. And it's just an opportunity, right? But I do want to ask you, so following up on that, what are some of the most important technological updates that lawyers need to be making as we head into the second half of 2022?
Absolutely. I love that question, because some people are just they might still be using paper files. We talk to them every day at CASEpeer, but the shift now is really about automation. It's about being able to do more. And that's not to say that you're letting staff go, right? It's about, especially in plaintiff space, for example, driving higher case value by being able to focus your employees, your paralegals, your attorneys, your staff on higher level tasks, like spending more time looking at the case, connecting with the client, building more value for the client. And that's regardless of what your practice area is, but it's building and nurturing those relationships. Past clients are going to be your best future referral source, right? They're free, but it's time invested during the lifetime of the case or the lifetime that they're working with you. And so automation, looking for tools to automate and help make discovery easier, tools out there that make, proof of service easier. There's a lot of great technology out there. And then of course, your case management platforms. If you're on a legacy software that is still on your server, listen, there's good softwares out there. It has served you well, but you're going to see and you're going to save more time and be able to do more. And again, free up your team to be able to invest time in nurturing client relationships and building value around the cases you have. Or you get home in time to have dinner with your family, whatever floats your boat. It really is in those newer systems. So that's something to keep in mind. I always remind people, you may have technology that's working for you. We talk to people all the time that say, hey, I just like to see what's out there every couple of years. That's a really good approach. You might look out there and see, hey, what I'm using is great. I'm using it to its full potential. So I'm happy and it's working for me, but it's better to know that because you went out and evaluated than just keep your head down and do what you've always been doing, because the reality is that your competition is not standing still, right? And so that's always what you're looking at and who you're competing with at the end of the day.
I always love being a guest on like other people's things, and they'll ask me what people should do, because I'm the phone guy, right? I make sure you answer the phone, and the first thing I tell them is like, I don't even care if you use an answering service. I want you to at least have a plan for what you're going to do with your phone. And people are shocked that I say that. And I'm like, because to me, I'm not trying to sell you a product. I'm trying to help you make the most of your time. If you're not open to using something like that or outsourcing, that's totally fine. But
Yeah.
let's at least. I totally understand what you're saying. I'm on the same page there.
Well, and then in your book too, it's like, well, and what are you doing with that lead? Like, are you writing it down on a notepad or is it going somewhere? I don't care what you use, but use something to track your leads because you paid money for them.
I got a funny story for you, and then I promise I'll shut up. So recently we had somebody call us, and she is a solo practitioner. She's going on a trip, in a camping trip in the mountains, and she's like, oh, I need somebody to answer my phone call. Great, we could do this, we could do that. And they're like, how am I going to get my messages? And we're like, we send them via SMS text and email. We could send them as few as, and she goes, but I'm not going to have any service where I am, like cell service. And we were like, well, it doesn't really matter. You can retrieve them when you leave. Like, if you're not going to have any cell service, you can't call the people back anyway. So, we can tell them that you'll be back. And she was like, well, that's not going to work. I need my messages. And the salesman said, well, we don't have carrier pigeon. Like, we can't write it down physically for you. And
there's no other way to get it if you're out there camping.
You're out of options. We can't provide you a solution for that specific scenario. I find that hilarious that he was like, we don't have carrier pigeons, albeit a little rude, but what are you going to do? I do want to ask you though. So this is sort of like a where to start type of question. So, because a lot of attorneys that they hear, I need legal tech, I need this, I need that. They don't have any experience using software. Where should somebody begin when they try to figure out which software is a good fit for their practice, and what should they be looking at? Like, what do you call the software that they should look at?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love helping people wherever they are in their journey in terms of adopting technologies, because there's sort of these core technologies, like we call it case management software, practice management software. That's the MyCases of the world, the CASEpeers of the world, right? Like it is essentially where you're going to have your cases, and then you also have ideally reporting related to your practice, right? If you're someone that invoices and bills by the hour, you're going to want software that has billing and invoicing and, ability to charge credit cards and things like that in your software. If you're a personal injury firm, which obviously we serve, you're going to want something where you can track medical bills and have a settlement calculator at the end of the day when you're settling cases. And then you're going to want to see how you're performing against insurance companies and maybe which of your attorneys bring in more fees, which of your attorneys are billing more hours. So every law firm, depending on your practice area or your model, right? Because now we have a lot of firms that charge monthly rates and things like that. You're going to want to just identify kind of what your needs are, but the core starts with practice management or case management software. There's a lot of other great technologies out there that can help power your practice, and power, like I think sections essentially of your firm. But that's the core, and that's really where everything is going to start and end, because these other tools ideally will integrate with your core software. In terms of how to go about evaluating what's going to be right for your firm, it's a lot of things. I kind of touched on thinking about the practice area and seeing kind of what your core needs are. Definitely knowing if your contingency fee primarily, which lots of firms do a lot of everything these days, or do a little bit of this and a lot of that, you're going to want to figure out what your core need is. And then definitely make decisions based off of that. And my advice often is to make a list first with your key decision makers. And that's important too, is getting buy-in from core people on your team and making a list of needs and then making a list of wants. Because often I talk to firms, or I'm talking to attorneys at cocktail parties that come and they start talking about wants first. And that's really important. We want you to dream big. We want you to be visionary about what you want in your practice. But sometimes we see software decisions having been made based on want, and then you get into a software you chose and it doesn't have things you need, right? And that's the most important thing at the end of the day. So that's important. And then there's so many great resources online. Reach out to your local listserv. Often, getting feedback from other attorneys out there or other paralegals or staff out there can be super helpful. We have a lot of people that come to us from listservs or asking mastermind groups what they use, things like that. And then do research, look at online reviews. Again, just like people shop around for lawyers these days, you've got to do the same legwork to make sure that you're going with the company that's going to be right for you. And then ask the right questions on demo everything. Don't, go with the first software that you demo, even if you love it, because chances are you're going to like a lot of things about every software, but you want to make sure you feel really good and informed about the decision you make for your firm.
I love that advice. It's just be a smart shopper, ask the right questions, make sure that you've identified your needs, and then there's always stuff that you can add on, right? If it would be nice if I could have this, but I really needed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to ask you, because I think that this, like, we sort of have our wants, right? But I think the needs of a lot of law firms is improving their client experience, because at the end of the day, we're in the service industry, right? We're serving clients. So how can attorneys use technology to improve the experience that they provide for their clients? Like, what's the sort of the draw for the customer of the attorney at the end of the day?
Oh, I love this question, because it is fundamentally, like, I view myself as being in the service industry. Yes, we make technology, but we teach you how to harness that technology. We want you to have a great experience. We want your staff to love using CASEpeer. I know you guys feel much the same way at Answering Legal. So, and just like we think that way, I want you to think that way. Law firms, like lawyers, paralegals, all day, like you guys are, you just happen to be, you're in the service business, you happen to be a law firm, right? And so the way that technology can help you, there's a lot of different things. There's some specific technologies I'll throw out there, but fundamentally, I already touched on one piece, right? Automating busy work, eliminating busy work so that you free up more of your face time or your human time investing into your clients, having real conversations with them, getting to know their needs, whether they're coming to the office, you're doing it on Zoom, you're doing it over the phone. That's great. You can even automate check-in text messages, or you can have a tool like a case management software or something separate like Connect, where you're texting with the client and communicating with them on their level. Most clients these days, unless they're in an older generation, they're not going to want to pick up the phone. They're going to want to text with you, right? So it's also making sure that you're making yourself and your services accessible where the client's needs and wants are, right? But there's other tools that are apps that keep the client up to date on where their case is at. I know that there's tools out there like Case Status, which is a great tool. There's Milestones. So there's other things out there really that are geared all about the client experience. And a lot of those interface with case management softwares. We have an integration with Case Status. And there's also client portals and practice management software. And that's another thing. When we introduced our client portal about 5 years ago, nobody wanted to use it, right? We had like two forward thinking firms that were like, oh, I can't wait to give my clients access to a client portal. That's changed because clients are asking for it. It's a secure way for them to share documents, photos. It's an easy way to send them an update and they can log in and read a message. Sometimes that's a lot easier for them to access even than email. So these are the kinds of things that you should think about, but a lot of it is time, and the time comes from automation, and then you can invest that time into the client relationship.
I love having a client portal for like almost everything that I buy service wise, because I am one of the most disorganized people that I've ever met. And for me to have all of my like if I had an open case with an attorney, I'd have all my documents in that place. I'd have the schedule of when I need to go in, or what my next court date is, or what the next step is, and like a history of the conversation. It would be so useful to me.
Yeah,
But I do want to say, for anyone tuning in a little late, welcome to our law firm summer reboot camp. My name is Nick Werker. Today we're focusing on legal tech. Here with me is the wonderful Gabriela Cubeiro, the CEO at CASEpeer Legal Software. So we're talking a lot about what to do, but I sort of want to let people know what not to do, or maybe if they're doing this, that they're sort of on the wrong track. What are some of the frustrating mistakes that you see growing law firms make when it
I
comes
love
to?
this question too. I
All
have a
right.
lot of thoughts on this. I see a lot of mistakes out there. And the first one is you have technology that you've selected, you've paid for it, and you're not using it, or you're not using it to your full potential. I don't care what software you use, but if you have software, you've committed to it, you've got to really commit. You've got to get your team excited about it, whether that's by cracking the whip or by rewarding them with ice cream or pizza parties, whatever it is. But you've got to use the technology that you've bought. Because I'll talk to law firms all day long that say, oh, I bought this software, and yeah, I mean, I liked what I saw in the demo, and we're not using it, so we're shopping around. Sometimes you may have chosen the wrong software, and I'll get to that in a second, but a lot of times it's simply because law firms are busy. All of you joining us know you're probably stretched thin. Nobody has time to implement software. Sometimes change is hard when you're so busy, right? And so please, I urge you, I guarantee everybody joining here today probably has something in place they could be using better, using more efficiently. And that's going to, again, give you time back in your day that you can either, buy yourself some bandwidth to breathe and get lunch or go home on time, or again, buying you time that you can reinvest into growing the business or reinvest into client relationships or whatever is most important to you right now in your firm. So it's using the technology you have. The other mistake I see often is shopping on price exclusively. right? And that's very dangerous. A lot of practice management softwares, and I'll talk about services and investing in those too, but a lot of practice management softwares, we're all in a similar ballpark, and there are gradations. And I know that if you're a small business, I work with almost exclusively contingency fee lawyers at CASEpeer. So I know what it's like for them starting a firm. I mean, if they make it, they're not profitable for 2 years, right? It's a tough business.
Mhm.
So, I understand what it's like starting a business with very tight purse strings, but you also want to make sure that you're getting the technology that's right for you. So if you find yourself evaluating technology or services, and the one is better for you, whether it's a technology or service, and you say, well, but it's too expensive, I'm going to go with this one that's not as good only because of the price, you're not thinking long term. And that's dangerous. That means that later you're going to have an expensive migration. It means that in 2 years, you may not be where you could have been had you been harnessing the right technology or service, or heaven forbid, it affects your clients or something goes wrong, or, those are the worst case scenarios. But typically it's more just that it slows you down, not making that investment early on. And so that's something I really want you guys all to think about. And it doesn't matter if you're a 2-person firm that's just getting started shopping for brand new technology, or if you're a larger firm looking to make a move, you don't want to make a lateral move, right? You want to always make sure that you're choosing the technology that's going to help drive you forward, or the service that's going to drive you forward. And in terms of service, I still see firms hesitating and holding on to things that they shouldn't have to, whether it's records retrieval on the plaintiff side's a big thing now that I see more firms getting comfortable outsourcing, but the reality is that can save you a lot of upfront costs in terms of a whole team member or a whole team, depending on the size of your firm, that's sitting in your office, getting benefits, working on those requests. Those people that you have doing that now, they could be doing something else, and you can outsource that, right? Outsourcing, and outsourcing, I think, is sort of a dirty word, but it's not, right? It allows you to take something and give it to an expert, like answering legal in terms of what they do, right? And then now frees you and your staff up to do more with their time and what they're experts in. And that's a really good thing. And
I
again,
want
a lot of times people don't do it because they're afraid of the investment, of the cost, or they think foolishly they can do best, and that's not always the case.
I want to piggyback off your first point. And I want to emphasize that in my experience, the best way to buy a technology to use, and this is why I love working with CASEpeer, is because I have to believe in the people that work in the organization from top to bottom. So when you're talking with somebody, I call it a sales rep, but you could call it account manager, customer success, anything like that. If I have a connection or an understanding or like a really good vibe, right, with the person that I'm talking to, and like that's a good entry point for me, because then I understand that, okay, that person works there, they bring that energy to that workplace, they must be excited about this product. Let me ask them more about what their team is like. And I like an ongoing relationship with a team that can help me use the product. I don't want to be just given this product, like it does this, it does that, it does this, figure it out.
Yeah, whether it's technology or service, you want to know you're going to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody
That's right.
and say, hey, I'm having this problem. And I mean, there's softwares out there now that they don't even offer phone support after the first 60 days or something like that. Like I think there's such I see a lot of this in legal technology, and we all have experienced this, right? Whether it's your health insurance company or whatever it is, everyone's all about efficiency and cutting costs and like, where can we shave off? And that's one of the things that I'm seeing. And quite frankly, like, yeah, you have definitely a lot of needs in the first 60 days, but you're not utilizing all of CASEpeer after 60 days. You're going to have needs 90 days, 2 years down the line, and you're hiring new employees that are going to have questions and need training. And just, it's something that we're very passionate about here because quite frankly, like, right, we want you to be able to harness all of our software. And again, and that said, again, it's also just knowing what you're getting into. You might find a software out there that's going to be the right software. They have lots of help resources, even if they have limited support and training, maybe you can pay for it. It's just good to ask those questions and go in kind of with eyes wide open, and being aware sometimes of those hidden costs too. Because again, you're looking maybe at the sticker price per user or per month or whatever the rating might be, but then you want to also keep in mind some of these additional values that you may get from different companies. But that's a great
Absolutely.
point, Nick.
Well said. I think that most of the attorneys watching this right now or at some point in the future have at least a few people involved with the day-to-day management of their firm, unless you're completely solo, in which case a lot of the stuff that we're talking about will help you get to this point. But some of our viewers may have like a lot of people involved in that process. So what advice do you have for those running firms on making sure that everyone at the practice is on the same page when it comes to utilizing the technology?
It's so important for you to have buy-in from everybody on the team. And there's different ways you can do that. And when I say everybody on the team, you're gonna no doubt have people in your office that are disgruntled about change. That's okay. But if you've got key people, especially people that you expect to use your technology to help manage the firm, if you expect them to be champions of the technology, which when we talked about having technology that you don't use, it's often because you don't have someone championing it. And frankly, you know, if you're joining us as a partner or as a law firm owner, you don't have time. Like, you need to be behind the software, you need to support it, support the technology, but you hopefully are a champion, but you don't have time to be there day to day, making sure everyone's using it properly, right? So you need buy-in from everyone that's in those roles, right? So how do you do that? If you're in the market for new technology, you make sure they're part of the evaluation process. Now, is everybody going to be 100% happy with your choice? Like, hopefully you can get a room full of people to agree, but sometimes that's hard. It depends on how many people, but you just want to make sure that everyone can kind of come and meet and agree on the criteria that you're looking for, and then be all in, right? And so involving them in the process, because the more involved your team's going to be, the more excited they are. The other piece is then when you're bringing it into your firm, I always recommend, like, sometimes a lot of staff's first exposure to software is a training, and that's okay, right? Like, that's good. You want them to get trained, and depending on how that training is run, it can be good. But I also, every time we're doing initial trainings, I always tell my team, we want to make sure too that the team gets excited to use it. So a lot of times for larger firms, we'll do like, hey, these are a little teaser. These are the 10 things you're going to love about this technology. And we do that maybe a month even before they're in the software using it, if they're going through a migration, but it starts creating a buzz and an energy in your office. And if your technology provider doesn't do that, your staff can do that, right? You're the people that you had helping select the technology, that are excited about the technology, they can do a presentation like that. So it's all about getting your team excited. And then ultimately it's about saying, this is what we're using and we're not looking back. And then sticking to your guns. Because sometimes I talk to people that say, I tried to implement something and, my team didn't like it. And you either didn't get buy-in, from a couple key people, which that's a mistake. But you also, if you have a team of people that's not willing to evolve and help your business evolve, that's a problem, and it's not the technology. Right? It's a problem on your team, or it's a culture problem. And so you need to approach those things differently.
I love the idea of having one person in your in your organization, take the training, right? After you've gotten all the buy-in, and then being the champion and training the staff of everybody else internally. And then this way, it doesn't seem like it's getting handed down, organization wise, that there is one champion who can be sort of like the role model for everybody else. I want to talk about, because there are obviously a bunch of people here who are going to be relatively up to date on adopting legal tech. And they're looking for ways to really like jump ahead of the competition, take their firm to the next level. What kind of tech related recommendations do you have for them?
Ooh, the beautiful thing about being a lawyer right now is that there's so much cool new technology coming out, and it kind of depends on what your practice is and what your needs are. But I'm going to give a shout out to some of the new cool things that I've seen out there. One of them's not that new, but you may not be using it right now, and that's Proof. Or Proof Serve. I think if you put that into Google, it'll pop right up. And that is like the Uber for process serving. So you, instead of right now, a paralegal or some assistant in your office is going online, looking for a server that services a certain area, he or she may call 5 of those providers. I mean, that's such a lengthy process, right? It takes like half a day sometimes, depending on where you're trying to serve somebody. This is just an online portal. You post the job, someone grabs it. You can get like real-time updates on where that is at. It's just so cool. So if you haven't checked it out, I recommend checking out ProofServe. That can really help your firm streamline. And I haven't heard a bad thing about them from anyone that uses them. Another one like that is Esquire Tech. They do a lot of streamlining for discovery. Really cool stuff. It just reads discovery, makes it into a form for your client to fill out, lets you review their answers, like if you've got form interrogatories, things like that. So that's one to really check out. And then there's things like Clear Brief, which is really cool. And that's more for making sure that you're kind of putting together the best briefs you can. And so there's just a lot of cool technology that's always emerging. I mean, I think the best way is to, keep an eye out on the interwebs, be on LinkedIn, be on Twitter, maybe follow that legal tech hashtag, because that's how it's going to surface some of these cool new things that are coming out. And I'm sure, sometimes we blog about these things, no doubt Answering Legal does as well. I know you guys always do sort of a wrap up at the end of the year of cool new technologies. So that's a good thing too.
You know what my favorite thing to do is, because I used to be so against, I don't know why, right? But like advertising, like you're not going to sell me anything. I don't watch ads. I hate ads. But now I remain pretty open-minded to like Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads, because they're pretty well targeted at least from what I've seen, to like be helpful in my everyday life. And I've bought quite a few things that I've seen advertised to me, or like you said, I follow a lot of like influencers, right, in legal tech on Twitter. So if you're really looking to get ahead of the game, that's, in my opinion, where to start is get involved in the conversation. Oh, there is a question. Hold on. So you mentioned earlier that one of the biggest mistakes lawyers make is not utilizing software they're paying for to its fullest potential. What's some advice you can give for attorneys looking to better integrate legal tech into their workflows?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one recommendation I'd have if you have technology is to try to reach out to that provider too and schedule an account review. I think a lot of softwares are open to that. Every technology, every case management, practice management software wants you to be with them forever. So they should have the approach of, let's book a time, let's make sure you're harnessing the software to the full potential. So setting up an account review and then really walking through it with that provider or with an account manager, whoever would conduct that with you, and they can give you really tailored advice specific to that software, and kind of in line with where you're using it right now, right? Because everyone's going to be at a different level. The other piece of advice, Tony, that I have is that it's really important simply to carve out time. every law firm I speak to wants to automate more. We all do. I want to automate more at CASEpeer. I'm sure Nick and Joe, you guys
I
want to
do.
automate more.
I
Answer
do.
Google. Every business does, right? The hardest part is time. And so, Tony, if that's allocating someone in your firm who can own this piece and dedicate 6 hours a week to it, or a day a week, maybe a Friday. And what I mean by that is, you're probably harnessing technology right now that requires someone to sit there and manually build out a workflow. And once it's there forever. Or to build in a template that your team can use, a new template letter or template envelopes going to the client or whatever that is, right? Document automation. But it just requires that investment of time up front. And the minute it's there forever. And then you just have to go in and edit. I have one client that was an early adopter of CASEpeer who he was interested in using it when he worked at another firm. They didn't adopt, but when he started his firm, he started it with CASEpeer. And the way he approached it was that every single time he manually made a letter, he made it into a template. And he said the exercise up front was a slog, but now he's got 2 other attorneys working for him and staff, and all of those things are already in place. And it did help him even when it was just him and his wife, because he could right off the bat, as soon as he built that template, he could start to harness it. So I really recommend dedicating the time. And especially when we think about this in the context of sort of the mid-year reboot, you've got a time to hit those 2022 goals. That's the biggest recommendation I have. And it's the hardest one for firms to do, is carve out time, because just there's always something else to do. And I understand that.
Oh, and that's a mindset thing too, is if you can switch your mindset to the work that I do now will help make the work that I do in the future a lot easier and more sort of applicable to growth, then I should do it now, right? It's not a waste of time now to invest in my future. But I'm running out of time. So before we wrap up today, I want to give you the chance to talk a little bit about CASEpeer, share some of the newest developments with your software, and sort of like what's going on with CASEpeer. How can we get involved? What can we do with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I feel like I've had the chance to talk about it a little bit, and definitely reach out if you have any other questions to me on email. You can find me on social, over in the chat box. But some of the exciting things that we're working on right now is really making sure that we're part of your firm's ecosystem. This year, we've been focused on rolling out a lot of integrations. We have a Zapier integration, so making it easier to connect or get messages, for example, like from answering legal through emails, things like that. We're going to be rolling out an integration with LawPay. We're going to be rolling out integrations with Connect, with Multis Medical, with improving our case status integration. So there's always things like that we're working on. One big thing that's coming this summer too is reporting API, which we're super excited about for firms that want to take their data and just digest it in 1,000 different ways. We're making that possible. And then the other next focus for us is more automation. Again, we do have a lot of it that's already built in, but firms need and want more. And so that's a big focus for us as well.
I love it. It's really exciting. Congratulations on all those integrations. For
Yeah.
anybody who doesn't know a lot about technology, that is some of the hardest stuff to build into your platform. So I commend you on that. It's really exciting. But I do want to thank you so much, Gabriela, for joining us and being the first guest today at our law firm summer reboot camp.